this school in the northern tip of Manhattan Island, in this gymnasium, was where Farrell Hopkins, a young elementary school coach, first got to see Lou Alcindor. Tall, different, uncoordinated. Well, I got to coach that young man in high school at Powell Memorial Academy. The first year was a little bit rocky. I mean, we had a giant of a child playing with 18-year-olds. I remember going into Madison Square Garden, and we were both nervous. And I reminded him that every time he fell down, he set a brand new record for 14-year-olds in Madison Square Garden. 4 years later, we had won a lot of games, had a lot of fun. Lou Alcindor moved on. He could have gone to any school in North America. He was a great student. And the legend of New York City became the legend of the world. It's been 2 years, but it may well have been yesterday. They called it Motown versus Showtown, the Beauty and the Beast. In the first 3 games of the final series, the back-to-back World Championship Lakers came up empty. No team had ever fought back to win from such a playoff deficit. But down in the belly of the Great Western Forum, it was just as it always has been. Around the locker room sat Irvin, James, and Coop, Jr., Byron, and the rest. And amongst them all was Cap, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, the players' patriarch who had gone through those pregame motions in the very same spot for the past 14 seasons. At 30, they said his end was near. Then at 42, after over a decade's worth of premature predictions by the press, Abdul-Jabbar would exit the game after 20 years on the professional court. Being 40 in the NBA just wasn't done, but by that 4th game against the Pistons, being the exception was nothing new to Kareem. A long time ago, he had resigned himself to a majority of 1. He was born Ferdinand Louis Alcindor, Jr. in 1947 in Harlem, the day after his hero, Jackie Robinson, first crossed the color line and played as a Brooklyn Dodger at Ebbets Field. Robinson embodied black hope, which later fueled Lou's racial pride. So it's no surprise that his first dream was of Dodger baseball, and his first serious talent was pitching. But I mean, you could have been a good, outstanding athlete in a lot of sports.
I could have pitched.
Yeah?
I definitely could have pitched if I had stayed with it and worked on my control.
Yeah, well, I was going to say, some batters didn't believe you could pitch, for crying out loud.
You know, you weren't there. The last game we played in Little League, we were getting slaughtered, and I was playing the outfield, and I used to relief pitch, and so they bring me in, you know, I thought, and, you know, the first batter comes in, and I'm going to, you know, and the ball went up in the stands and bouncing into people like went over the fence into the stand, my first pitch, and then they didn't score any more runs.
Well, I bet you, because nobody get up after that. What, are you crazy? But born of 6-foot parents, Lou was 5'4" at the age of 8. By 14, he had stretched to 6'8", and so he reluctantly bypassed baseball and turned his athletic attention towards the basketball court. I first met Lou even before he entered Powell Memorial Academy, the all-boys Catholic high school run by the Irish Christian Brothers on Manhattan's West Side. This is where I coached basketball. His pal, Art Kenny, who was 1 year his senior and a freshman on our team, used to bring Lou into our gym to play all day long on Saturday.
And I remember you were recruiting Arthur, and he said, hey, come on down to Power, we can go down there and shoot on Saturday, and it's indoors. And that's all I needed to hear, you know, because, you know, it was cold. It was March or something, and it's still cold here in New York.
Attracted both academically and athletically to Power, Lou received a $300 scholarship and became the freshman starting center on the varsity team. He grew into a quick, agile 7-footer by his sophomore year. By the end of his time at Power, Lou led the team to 3 consecutive city championships, in which he also made All-American. They called him the new but improved Wilt Chamberlain, and as expected, New York's media and the nation's college scouts swarmed to our gym, but they never really got close. All inquiries were channeled through me during those 4 years, which riled some people, especially late in his senior year when he was paring down his college choices. I was preparing for my next job at Holy Cross College, where many suspected I was secretly shipping Lou.
I remember my freshman year, and people started to notice me, and letters started arriving. And then sometime in my sophomore year, I guess you had a file, one shelf of a file cabinet full of letters. And I remember about every 3 weeks, I'd mosey into your office and say, let me see the letters. Yeah. And then one day you told me, look, don't bother with the letters. Just whatever school you want to go to, if they have a basketball program, you can go there. Don't even think about it.
But in 1965, while still a high school senior, Lou visited UCLA, met the revered coach John Wooden, and returned to New York, fully trusting him and committed to the Bruins. It was a pairing of a proud black city youth with a white native of Middle America, 37 years his senior. Opposites in roots, but almost identical in temperament and ideals.
Well, Louis was, in my opinion, the most valuable basketball player I believe that I have ever seen. Certainly, by far, the most valuable player that I ever had. An unusual person, as you well know, Jack, a very unselfish person. I think that perhaps was one of his greatest values. It helped the other players on the team to accept him and not be envious or jealous of him because he was so unselfish. And it would be hard for other players to be selfish when a tremendous player like Louis would be so unselfish. I learned from Louis. I hope he learned from me, and I know I learned from him.
A lot of the other coaches in the Pac-8 at that time didn't like him because he didn't have a bag of money under his desk, and he didn't really care if he didn't get so-and-so the player as long as that person fit into a system. And I thought that was remarkable. There hasn't been another one like him, I don't think. I haven't gotten to meet that coach. The lessons I learned from him were really extraordinary, especially having the opportunity to look back and see what he did and how he did it. What he did was remarkable enough, but how he did it really puts him in a separate category.
In Lou's sophomore season, the first year he was permitted to play varsity, the Bruins went undefeated all the way to the 1967 championships. Wooden's Bruins were to make 2 more triumphant trips to the finals in 68 and 69, dropping only 2 games in those 3 years. Lou became a triple winner of the tournament's MVP award, the only player in the history of the Final Four to corner the market on the honor throughout his college stay. His first professional move on the basketball court was decided by a flip of a coin. Phoenix lost, Milwaukee got the first-round draft pick, and Lou headed east. Accustomed to an upbeat, cosmopolitan lifestyle, Lou felt out of his element in the quiet, conservative factory town, but the transition to pro ball was not as difficult as the move to Milwaukee. Earning Rookie of the Year honors, Lou yanked the Bucks out of the league's cellar to the top floor in 6 months, bowing only to the Knicks, who went on to become the NBA champs that year. In the following season, Oscar Robinson joined Lou, now Kareem, on the Bucks starting line, and that combination sealed their first NBA title. He picked up the playoffs MVP in his first of 6 historic league MVP awards, although he put in 4 more years with Milwaukee. By 1975, Kareem felt that he had paid his dues, and it was time to move on. You're in Milwaukee, they drafted you, they went through as they wanted you. What happened in Milwaukee?
Great acceptance by the fans, total culture shock for me. Born and raised in New York, go to college in Los Angeles, and here I am in Milwaukee, and entertainment for a night is a 3-piece polka band and some bar, and I'm like stuck there. And the fans were the best fans you can ever have. I mean, just really nice people, loved the game, didn't know a whole lot, weren't sophisticated fans, but they enjoyed the game. And it was weird because they made me feel great, but being in Wisconsin in the middle of winter won't make anybody feel great unless you're a bear or, a trout living in, and you're in hibernation. I mean, it's not a fun place to be, especially when you're used to New York and Los Angeles. So that was tough.
And so what, did you go to management and tell them that...
No, what can I say? Move the team? I mean, It was doing so well. It's the only team that's gotten to the World Championship in 3 years.
How did you leave? I mean, what was the deal? How did they come about that?
Well, they tried to make a deal with me to sign on. I took one extension of my contract, a 2-year extension, at a nice salary increase, and then they wanted me to sign for like 3 more years. And they were telling me, look, you can live in New York, you can live in Chicago, I was like, no, I can't do it. I'm sorry, I can't do it. And, I love you people, but I can't do it.
The Lakers traded 4 young players for Kareem. 4 players Bucks GM Wayne Emery said would be around after Kareem was long gone. 9 years and 2 championship rings later, Kareem experienced a legendary rivalry between LA and Boston at its boiling point. Despite a disastrous series debut billed the Memorial Day Massacre, LA swept the remaining games, and Kareem, at 38 years of age, buried the skeptics by not only competing as the oldest player ever in the playoffs, but also as its most valuable.
I think he's often commented that people wondered what he was doing when he was stretching a decade before others stretched, and the way I think he just ate, took care of his body. The combination of his conditioning, his excellence of play over a period of time, not to mention the fact that the Lakers were the glamour team of our league at a time when we needed a glamour team along with the Celtics.
Kareem knew it was never his age, but his ability to play well that mattered, and for 3 decades, that was under relentless scrutiny. He had to keep an even keel throughout a career to cut across the most progressive and innovative era of the sport and spanned one of the most passionate chapters in American history. It was his parents, Cora and Lou Sr., who cultivated Kareem's pride in his heritage. But during his years at UCLA, it was Malcolm X who put the racial hostility of the 60s in perspective. Once he seized that, he never let go.
It was halftime of a game that we were losing. Lou Alcindor wasn't playing very well. He and I had spent a lot of time talking about prejudice. I told him, there are people in the stands that are saying, that guy's playing like a nigger. He thinks I said, you're playing like a nigger. It was a problem between us that lasted for a long time.
Well, the way I remember it was that you said that if somebody was watching in the stands, they would say that I was being lazy and listless like a nigger.
And that's a bad word, and I mean, that's a word that neither one of us enjoy, and that might be the only time I'd ever use that word.
Yeah, and it was such a shock to me, and it had a very traumatic and negative effect on me, but I certainly never implied that you were a racist. I think the exact opposite. You've always been totally above board and ethical in how you dealt with people. Really, I got a lot of value from that, because I could, at that age in my life, I could see how racism really was something that clouded your ability to make sound judgment. And I always took that with me. But that was an insensitive remark. You were excited, and I don't, 99.8% of the things that you did with me were all for my own good, and it had a very positive effect on my life.
We're in UCLA, John Wooden, palm trees, 4 years, championships. What was it like?
It was a great time. I think it was a great time to be growing up. I think it was a wonderful place to try to reach for manhood. It was a very tumultuous time in this country with the Vietnam War and a number of things that were happening in civil rights. It was quite a time.
1968, the Olympic year?
Yes, it was.
What happened with the Olympics?
Well, I had a strong conviction that the Olympics were a political event in addition to being a sporting event, and I thought that blacks were being used to show the world that racial harmony was a fact here in the United States, when at that time it was only an ideal or a dream that people were trying to make real.
You took an awful lot of heat there. That was probably the first time I can remember you really being under the gun as a person, you know.
I did an interview on NBC with Joe Garagiola, and he suggested that I leave the country when I said that in terms of political rights, this really is not our country. We're denied our political rights, and Joe Garagiola suggested that I leave. I don't think it was based on any racist assumptions on his part, just the fact that he felt that I was complaining about the greatest country in the world, which America definitely is.
Does a Kareem Abdul-Jabbar have a greater obligation as a role model than a Joe Smith?
Oh, definitely. I talk to kids a lot about literacy and academics, and I always use the example of Dexter Manley. Here you have a man that was totally exploited. He went to 4 years of school at Oklahoma State, and the man came out and could not read. Now, you know, when you see that situation, you understand there's a whole lot wrong with the system, and something has to be done about it.
Are tall black athletes, are they more accepted now?
Oh, yeah. And in fact, it's really nice now. You know, you go through the airport, and instead of the young ladies looking at you with suspicion, and they get kind of a gleam in their eye. And that's nice, you know, to see that happen.
You don't have a gleam in your eye, though.
Of course I have a gleam in my eye. I wear shades.
Your family is very important to you. Your religion is very important to you. You were raised a Catholic in a fairly serious Catholic family.
Very serious.
Yes. And went through Catholic schools right up through high school.
Exactly.
What happened?
Well, I started reading, and I got very disturbed about the involvement of the Catholic Church in the slave trade. That really bothered me. And I read in a number of books where there were papal edicts that condoned slavery as long as the slaves were forced to become Christian. And I thought that really bothered, that was it. And I stepped away from the Catholic Church. I didn't find Islam right away. I started looking through a lot of other things. Everything, existentialism, free love, Buddhism, Taoism, and Islam, you name it. I investigated it. And in Islam, I found it conformed to the monotheistic tradition, but it did not have as much of the hypocrisy and discrimination that I found in the Catholic Church. And I think also the bureaucracy of the Catholic Church led for a lot of abuse. People in power tended to want to stay in power, regardless of whether they were right or wrong.
How did your parents react to you giving up Catholicism?
Well, I might as well have moved to Timbuktu and decided I was going to become a communist or something. You know, it was really hard for them. But they understood that I was serious about it, and I wasn't going about it just to impress people. They also were worried if I was going to join the black Muslims. I did not see that the racism that they were preaching at that time differed any different from what the Klan was saying. You know, they just changed the labels and reversed the colors, but it was the same negation of people's humanity.
What's next for Kareem Abdul-Jabbar?
Geez, I don't know. I'm getting pressure from the people that, you know, my lawyer and my secretary, they sat me down the other day and said, you got to figure out what you want to do for the next 10 years. It's very difficult. I don't know. It's nothing that I can be as passionate about or get as much of a challenge from as professional sports. I'll never be able to deal with that again, and that's taken some adjustment. But I'll find something. Right now, I'm enjoying the stuff I'm doing in the entertainment industry, acting and producing, and I hope to continue to do that.
Climbing to cruise at 42,000. We'll report again over Lincoln. Over and out.
Wait a minute. I know you. You're Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. You play basketball for the Los Angeles Lakers.
I'm sorry, son, but you must have me confused with someone else. My name is Roger Murdoch. I'm the co-pilot.
I think you're the greatest, but my dad says you don't work hard enough on defense.
The hell I don't. Listen, kid. I've been hearing that crap ever since I was at UCLA. I'm out there busting my buns every night. Tell your old man to drag Walton and Lanier up and down the court for 48 minutes.
Listen, now, I know you are going to help you. I used to help you.
Remember the rules. I have
Right?
to play basketball and you can wrestle, right?
No, don't get me upset about it. But listen, I'm a lot older, so are you. Let's get the game going. 3 game, and we start off right now. Oh, you stiff. No, you don't. No, you got to go in the pivot. Did you miss?
No, of course I didn't miss.
Huh? Get in the
I
pivot.
didn't miss.
You chased the ball. I remember that was another thing. Always make the young guys chase the ball.
Remember you told me about
Get in
missing.
here. I got you. Get in the pivot.
Okay, here we go.
Now,
Hold
hold it.
defense.
Hold it
Like-
now. Hold it.
I was like,
Don't push. No pushing.
try and make one of those.
Yeah, okay. All right, come on. We're starting here now. Don't push.
Okay.
Okay, wait a minute.
You didn't grab my leg that time.
Not yet. There you go. 1-0. Come on, I got the game. 1-0. Winning score. Don't you dare. 2-0. Favor the good guys. Here we go. Oh, gee. Where we go? See those big guys? Always get in. I'm not even going to cheat on you. This is it. This is called a sky hook. You should really, you could make a comeback with this shot.
You shot a ground hook. All right, you think I can bank this one?
You made a reputation in here.
Okay. The famous Donohue defense.
Oh. But I don't think we're proving anything. I know what we proved. I'm gonna die.